amount of knowledge, at least theoretical. And we will go through simple concepts today so that all of us understand the basics of the learning disability, how to differentiate it from the rest of the learning problems, behavioral concerns, what needs to be, what could be simple signs and characteristics that you should look for in children before we label them, and what could be some easily used checklists that as teachers you can use in your schools and classrooms in order to do the first year of intervention. Okay, so here we will start with Dr. Albert Einstein's words that everybody is a genius. That means every child is a genius and has skills inside him. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. Unfortunately, our system is set that it doesn't give enough validity for every child able to project his or her own expertise or strength areas. Unfortunately, they are all going to be evaluated using the same tools in the same way. Um, that certain children may not be able to produce the exact results despite having the adequate skill sets or despite having adequate abilities. Okay, so that is something that we see. So in our entire class, in our regular class, children are a group.
हाँ.
They come with all different types of skills and deficits. So we get all children with physical, sensory, or learning disabilities. While it's a very lonely existence, Susan Hampshire has said these are children who do not or are not considered to have any disability because they are look alike with anybody. However, their disabilities are so invisible that nobody can see or even understand. You only see that they are not learning, but we do not understand why they are not learning. These are a set of students who are always at a very high disadvantage because teachers are disappointed, parents are disappointed, all the more children themselves are disappointed because the worst part is they do understand that they are not stupid, and despite having the skills, they do not know why they are not able to make it in academics. When we look at children, we have to look at 5 different domains of development. We all think only academics or cognition comes in, but children from the beginning of development, all of us humans go through 5 different domains of development. The physical, which is the gross and the fine motor skills, like okay, so as I said, see, we all have different all children go through these 5 domains of development, which is the physical. The children start with physical, like they start moving around, crawling, turning around, walking. Then comes language development, which has 2 components, understanding and expressing. Then comes the third domain as cognitive, which includes thinking, planning, problem solving, learning, memory, attention, decision making. There is also the social emotional concept of play and social skills, development of empathy, sympathy, and emotional regulation. Added to all these 4 domains, there's another domain which we tend to ignore most of the time because it's something that happens every day. It is called the adaptive behavior. It includes our daily living skills, as in eating, grooming, dressing, bathing, everything. Added to it is communication, which is different from language development, how we use our community, functional academics, leisure, health, and safety. So we most often we consider when children enter school that cognitive is the only thing that matters. We forget that the previous domains of physical and language development have a lot to do with their cognitive skills, social emotional skills, and adaptive behavior. So these do not develop one after the other. They all develop at the same time but at different levels. So if there is a deficit in any of the physical or language components, the cognitive and the social emotional component will take a task on it, but it will influence both of this. So when we are looking in our classes, we always are very concerned about normality. Who is normal? Who is abnormal? However, the truth is there is nothing called as normal. What is normal at one point becomes abnormal at another point, and what was abnormal at one point becomes the new normal, as we are all facing today. So it's only a series of spectrums that we fall in different periods of time, and it's all determined by usually the strengths and weaknesses and what is the current social norm at a particular point in time. So what was one in one century was normal becomes abnormal in this century. What is abnormal in this century may become the new normal in the next century. So when we say learning disabilities or learning and behavioral disorders, as we call it, what could be the reasons? There could be some biological reasons. That could be either genetic, that means hereditary, passed on from family members. It could be neurobiological. It could happen during when the child is conceived, during the prenatal period, or even postnatal after the child's birth. It could be neurodevelopmental, something to do with the neurological development during the growing years. As I said, it could be congenital, that some deficit or some damage that could have happened during pregnancy as lack in nutrition, illnesses to the mother. It could have happened during birth when, labor pain, during the labor, immediately after birth, if a child has neonatal jaundice, hasn't cried, these are different reasons. Postnatal, at any point in time before 18 years, during the first 18 years of life, if there is an insult to the brain by an accident or any other trauma and the development is affected, that could also cause learning or behavioral disorders. Illnesses or injury can cause, and there could be other metabolic causes, endocrine and metabolic causes, that can result in learning and behavioral difficulties in children. Apart from biological, not everything could be biological. There are also environmental causes for learning and behavioral disorders, either due to lack of appropriate stimulation during the growing years or at any point in time of developmental age, which is 0 to 18 years. It could be due to environmental exposure to environmental toxins. Sometimes, despite having every possible thing, that is nothing, or we could negate, there could also be unknown causes that we cannot justify as to why these learning and behavioral disorders cause. When there is a known cause, it's easier to intervene. When the cause is unknown, it becomes a little harder. When what we are all concerned about is eventually poor academic performance. That is the one point that we come up with, to identify a child who has anything. So what could be the different reasons for poor academic performance? It could be either due to limited cognitive capacity by nature or difficulty in perceptual processing of any child. The poor academic performance can be due to poor memory and attention span, could be due to distraction and lack of concentration on academic tasks. They could have difficulty in expressing ideas, that is eventually affecting academic performance, because all we expect is what is on the paper. The child may know a lot of concepts, may have entire knowledge and everything, but if a paper is blank or if a child is not able to express ideas either verbally or in written form, then it could affect academic performance. Specifically in our system, difficulty with written work surely is an indicator of poor academic performance, because if a child is not writing, then obviously we don't have anything to judge what or determine how the child is learning. So these are different reasons for academic performance. When we look at IQ, we have to understand this concept of the numbers. Of course, do not always go by these numbers, because these are not something that's easier to determine. And a single number can never determine any individual, specifically children's overall skills. But this is just a something to have on hand. Okay, to have some, when nothing is there, this helps us. So this is the average, below average, above average, very low, very high, extremely low. Different ranges. So it's a range, it's not a single number. A child falls in a particular range, and it may vary across development. When we are looking at learning problems, we are looking at 4 different types of learning problems. One, we call it as intellectual disability, mostly referred to as previously mental retardation. What does that mean is, when we saw the IQ score ranges now, Uniformly across all domains that we have seen, the child would have an IQ of less than 70. That means it not only should there be an IQ of less than 70 on an intellectual ability, they should also have adaptive behavior delays. Slow learners are a group which are like sandwiched between those who have lower IQ and those who have average IQ. So their IQ falls between 70 and 89. There is a group called learning disability or specific learning disorders. In general, we call them children who have average or above average IQ, so their IQ is 90 plus. However, please remember, as I said, never go by just the IQ scores. There is a lot of factors that determine the child's performance on an IQ assessment task, and hence some children with severe learning disorders may have an IQ score less than 90 or even less than 70, but it won't be uniform. Their scores would be a lot of scatter. The last group is gifted and talented, whose so-called IQ should be one more than 130. We call them the genius. So you must be wondering, why do I put gifted and talented in learning problems? Some of them have a uniform IQ of 130 and above, and that makes them genius. Some of them have a scatter, and some areas are stronger, and some areas are just in the average range. They may not go below average, but they may go in the average range. And hence, many children who are gifted and talented, over years, when they have never been identified as they go through middle and high school, may show deficits in one or few areas. But these are children who manage to pass through. They might possibly, in their A's, they come to B's. But they surely sail through. So they do also have learning or behavioral problems. See, there are two components we have to look into when we are talking about learning problems. There is a difficulty level and there is a disability level. When we call it as a difficulty, it affects a person's ability to learn, getting along with others, and follow conventional rules of learning academics. Difficulties in acquiring knowledge and skills compared to peers are there. So, when we say difficulties, it's an overall impairment of intellect and function. When we say learning difficulties, most often it is the intellectual disability that we talk about. So what is intellectual disability is there should be limitation in both the intellectual functioning and in adaptive behavior. So you saw the 5 domains. The last domain was the adaptive behavior. So these children not only have difficulty in learning academics or any other skill, they have difficulty in performing self-help skills and learning simple tasks that they are exposed to on everyday life. So, what are these adaptive behaviors that we are talking about? Are they are they are actually divided into 3 different tasks as conceptual skills, social skills, and practical skills. They would have, apart from having difficulty with reasoning, problem solving, learning from experience, and practical understanding of things, they also have difficulty in simple language and literacy skills, basic number concepts, and self direction. They have difficulties in acquiring or demonstrating basic interpersonal skills, social responsibility, social problem solving, difficulty in following rules and obeying laws. They cannot self or safeguard themselves. Or they generally are easily victimized. They have deficits in practical skills, as in personal hygiene and health skills. They have difficulty learning simple occupational skills. What we think is so common, travel, transportation, following schedules, use of telephone, they would have difficulty in all of these. Then we are talking about intellectual disability. It is necessary to remember that even though when we say less than 70 IQ, it is four, it is divided into 4 different subtypes based on the severity. We have severe and profound who have less than 35 IQ, and we have the mild and moderate who have 50 to 70 IQ. Most of the times we have we see children who are in the mild and moderate IQ range. in our classes at least up to 8th standard, because we do have promotion, right? We have compulsory promotion. So most often children with mild and moderate intellectual disabilities sail through it and go up to 8th standard. So, as I said, when we are looking at mild to moderate level, most of them have adequate verbal abilities, but the complexity of reasoning will be poor, and hence they may be able to reach up to elementary or middle school academic levels, the mild, whereas the moderate may need more of functional literary skills. Since they are most often fairly independent in their activities of daily living, they are not often seen as having significant difficulty. They would be only having living skills to be under supervision. The severe and profound children who may not be most often in our classes because they also have other comorbid disabilities. We are coming to the slow learners, or we call them academically low achievers or underachievers. These are synonymous terms that are used. The IQ is between 70 and 89. And they are classified again into two: borderline intellectual abilities, which is between 70 and 79, and below average abilities between 80 and 89. So, when we see children who have slow learners, this is the set of group that most often fall within the cracks. Since they can never be pushed off at extremely low, and never are the great cream of the class, they merge into the background and slowly fade away. Academically, they do have the ability, if given appropriate intervention, to go up to degree or at least vocational training skills. They can take up jobs that require routine tasks or with basic literacy skills. They can have independent living with or without supervision or with moderate support. These are children whom we feel that there is a gradual LKG, UKG, they might be able to do much better. But as they go higher in classes, their abilities as if it's like a gradual decline, and eventually they have significant difficulty in learning if not identified. The third category is the one that we call as specific learning disorders, dyslexia, all the different learning disorders. So, what is this learning disability? Um, it is a disorder in children who, despite it is a disorder in children who, despite conventional classroom experience, fail to attain language skills of reading, writing, and spelling that are commensurate with their intellectual abilities. Nothing that they have the ability, but despite the ability, they do not show appropriate academic performance. This is when we say, despite conventional classroom experience, we say at least 2 years of formal academic exposure, that they are not able to catch up academic or learn academic skills. Remember that when we talk about specific learning disability or specific learning disorders like dyslexia, dysgraphia, and all, the learning problem should not be due to a visual impairment, as in difficulty with seeing, difficulty with, or children who have low vision, difficulty who have other visual problems. It should not be to hearing impairment. It should not be due to orthopedic impairment, like any fracture or any writing problems or any fine motor related issues. It is surely not due to learning disability. It is not due to their IQ being less than 70. It should not be due to an emotional disturbance like anxiety, depression, or other emotional psychological problems. It should not be due to limited English proficiency. That means children whose native language is not English. And just because of that, if they are having learning problems, it is not specific learning disability. It is a language learning problem rather than a limited English proficiency. Then it should not be due to environment or cultural disadvantage. That means we have a lot of immigrants. They come from different places. So if they have difficulty in learning a language, or we have a lot of first generation learners, children who are first generation learners having learning problems despite having appropriate support in education, only then we call them specific learning disability. Okay. Always remember, children with specific learning disabilities, SLDs, should usually have above average to above average intelligence. As I said, sometimes the overall IQ score may be low, but there would be a scatter in their overall performance. There is always a discrepancy between the actual potential of this child and what they show in an academic achievement or academic sphere. So there is a difference between their IQ and what their grades are. Always remember, we cannot compare two children with learning disorders. Every individual is unique. No two persons with the same IQ, no two persons with the same diagnosis can have the same problems. Again, in learning disorders, severity levels vary from mild to severe. There are a lot of facts that myths and facts that we should understand. Simple myth with regards to learning disorders is that, oh God, this is something that children will outgrow. Why are you worried? It's only in second standard. He will outgrow it next year. Another 2 years, he will outgrow. No. Any learning disorder is a lifelong condition. It is not an illness to be cured, but it is a condition where intervention can help in reducing the severity, or early intervention can even help preventing a disorder from happening. Most often says boys are more affected than girls. No, boys and girls are equally affected. However, boys can be more visible because if girls don't learn academics, we don't give it much of a importance. Oh, girl doesn't have academic skills, no problem. We can teach her cooking. She's going to be married and she's sent off. But if a boy has academic problems or a behavioral problem, it comes into obvious. That is the reason that it shows us that boys are more affected than girls, but statistically, no, they are equally affected. Also, most people would think, oh, learning disability, that means it has to do only with English and it happens to only English speaking. No, children who are studying in vernacular medium schools can also have learning problems. Remember, this is not based on a language, it is based on learning. Most often, dyslexia is thought to be because of a visual perceptual problem. No, but it's more of a phonemic difficulty. That means to do with sounds. Or the child is dyslexic or learning disabled, cannot be a good reader. Completely wrong. With appropriate intervention, a lot of children have become very good readers. Most of us try to see these children as being lazy. We always tell the parents, no, he has the ability, he's just being lazy. If he can just put a lot more effort, then he can do much better. It is wrong. The fact is, they take a longer time to process information, and we don't have that much time to give to the child. We want it fast, and we are not ready to wait for the child to process the information. It is as simple as the time it takes for your computer to start at times. If a CPU is running off, or if your computer or phone or everything is slow, what would you say? That's as it is. So we always misperceive these children as being lazy. At some point, children also it becomes a learned. Even when I put the effort, the teacher is not bothered, the parent is not bothered. So why should I make the effort at all? That eventually leads them to become more lazier, but they are not actually lazy. We always brush it off as saying it's a small population, yeah, don't worry about it, it's okay. No, 1 in 5 children are affected with different types of learning problems or behavioral problems. So when we say 1 in 5 learning disorders, um, if you have a class of 30, count. We have 82 types of learning disabilities, and so if 1 in 5 has one in different types, we know how many children. um, we always consider that these children are not intelligent than others. No, the fact is, surely they have average or above average intelligence, and that is what differentiates children with learning disabilities from other learning problems. That is your key to remembering. So when we are talking about different types of learning disabilities, the most commonest name that you all would have heard is dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia. But there are, as I said, 82 types of learning disabilities, specific learning disabilities based on the area of brain that is affected. So there are a lot of subtypes under each of these common types. So dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia. There is dyspraxia, which is more of a sensory integration and motor coordination. There is central auditory processing, which has to do with processing and remembering language related tasks. There is something also called a non-verbal learning disorders. These children are very verbal, and hence very it's a rarer form of learning disorders. But most often children, since they are very verbal and they are able to express themselves to some aspect, are often missed and misperceived as children with behavioral problems, because their major difficulties come with nonverbal cues or body language, poor coordination, and being clumsy, which most are expressed as behavioral issues. There is also a visual perceptual, there is an auditory processing, and there is a visual processing. Apart from these, as I said, there are other language disorders like aphasia or dysphasia, where children have trouble understanding spoken language or poor reading. um, Comprehension skills, poor reading comprehension skills. Remember, they may be able to somewhere read and understand to a point. They may be able to read, but understanding would be a difficulty. What you say, they may not be able to understand. And hence, we always say, he's not listening, she's not listening to me. But there could be an underlying problem as they never understood whatever you said. So these are the different types of learning disabilities. We always think children with learning problems have only problems in learning academics, that is reading, writing, and mathematics skills or science and other skills. But no, they also have difficulty with memory, which is specifically working memory. That means managing multitasking, bringing it from short term to long term, including a lot of things. So that is working memory skills. They have difficulty with metacognition, that is cognition about cognition. We'll see that a little later. They also have difficulties with social or behavioral, which could be one primary deficit, or it could be a secondary deficit because of the learning problems. Their self concept, self image, self confidence may all take a hit because of the learning problems. And so here we are just talking about dyslexia. What is dyslexia? The major difficulties that you see will be in listening, it will be in spelling, it will be in reading. They would have motor control difficulties, they would have difficulties with memory, they would have difficulties in spatial temporal orientation, like telling time left, right, getting lost easily, and they have writing. So when we say dyslexia, it's not only reading, it also affects writing. Okay. Apart from reading and writing, these children also have oral language challenges. They have difficulty when it regards to listening. They have poor phonological awareness and memory for word sequences. So sometimes they miss out on certain directions. If you give more than two directions at a time or two-step instructions at a time, they may forget. Phone numbers, they may only be able to remember very little. In speaking, they may have difficulty in word finding, in the sense they would know what it is, they would be able to describe a particular object, but they may not be able to name it rightly. They may have difficulty with speaking multi-syllable words, elephant, disorientation, like that. If they are very longer words, they might have difficulty in remembering multi-syllable words. They may have difficulty in sequencing ideas. So when they are speaking, it may come out as jumbled sentences, as if there is no connection between one and the other. In both listening and speaking, imagine they have difficulty with one language, be it whichever is their primary language of learning, be it English, be it their vernacular language. The second language, which is always looked on as a foreign language, makes it much more difficult for them. So already learning one language is difficult. When you introduce second and third languages, that further disrupts their academic functioning. So when I said dyslexia does not mean it's only learning problems. The writing difficulties that come for children with dyslexia are in spelling. They always spell words as they sound. However they sound it is what they write it. If they say phone, and FONE could be the spelling. they confuse words with very similar ones. When we have these homonyms and homophones, these are the ones that they have difficulty with. Sometimes they leave words out when they are writing. They write very slowly and take a lot of scratching. If you see some children who make a lot of erasing and lot of cutting and writing, that is something. Sometimes they write very fast so that they don't want to forget their idea. So when they write so fast, what happens? The legibility takes a toss. Um, then they also have difficulty. Um, you may never understand what they have written. Sometimes they themselves would not understand what they have written. Again, organizing ideas into an order, they may look like jumbled sentences. They might have difficulty in even expressing their own personal views in writing, but orally they might be able to do a lot more better. So, when what we see in dyslexia as reading and writing and spelling problems or reading problems is only tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more that is beneath there, and that causes these subtypes in dyslexia. Okay, so they would have difficult all these reading problems which are undermined, and we don't give it much of a much concern or much of an importance to that is causing it. So language processing problems, that's why I said motor and language domain development during the early stages of language and motor skills does affect learning. So they have a lot more to take in for. So I'm just going to show you a couple of samples. At the end of the post, your organizers will send you a whole list of samples. These are just a few samples to understand what it is about. This is the reversal that we simply see: was and saw, P and a Q, B and a D. When I said they have so much of difficulty in finding words, see, spelling is, they try to write the word. They know it is difficult. They try to word the difficult, but they are not able to spell. So they say, think of a different word, challenging. So that also. So they go eventually to try to look at the easiest word to spell and write. Okay. Most of these children with dyslexia, when you take them for a eye examination or a visual examination, will clearly pass their visual, and doctors will say, optometrists will say, they have very perfect vision, so it's not. So if you see a child who can see like this in the first one, a child who sees slight double can pass screening, child who sees in a nice rolling way can pass, somebody who has words ulta pulta can also pass a visual. Okay, but if you think, if you have to see these samples, do you understand how hard it is for a child to pay attention to a book? Try reading those samples. What I will be sending you, or they will be sending you, for more than 10 minutes. Then you would understand what a child with dyslexia will go through. However, they may never be able to express to you as to what is causing their reading difficulty. Or even if they say the words are swimming, the words are running, do you think you're going to take it seriously? Or what would your reaction be? You would give them a slap, or you would say he's just making fun and playing around in the class. But please remember, it may be true. We may never be able to see what they are seeing. When it comes to numbers, this will be the reversal pattern as you would see. The 7, 9, 19, 12. These were some examples that children with dyslexia can show in writing when it comes to math. The second type of learning problem is dysgraphia, where two components are seen. One is difficulty with handwriting, spelling. Second component is with the written expression component, where a sentence structure, using of appropriate vocabulary, the content or the volume of information produced, and organization of the written ideas are concerned. These are two components that make dysgraphia. Um, in dysgraphia, it causes writing fatigue. So there are children who will be orally so good, they can narrate to you stories in hours together. Whenever you ask them to write, it would be like in 10 minutes, they'd say, my hand is hurting. Can I go for a restroom break? I can't write, all that. Because writing becomes a very difficult task for them. They have difficulties in using writing as a communication tool. These are children whom we often say, when I ask an oral in class, he is able to answer very well, but nothing is produced in the exam. How do you think I can give him marks? They have difficulty in writing. They always mix match upper and lowercase letters. Their sizing of letters will be different. The organization of letters goes from Delhi to Orissa or Mumbai to Delhi, whichever we can call. They have difficulties with cursive writing. In our system, where we expect children who start kindergarten with cursive, imagine children who have difficulties. Always remember, it's a request to all your teachers that only at fourth grade cursive is the right way to start. Starting cursive from kindergarten is not suitable for all children. Most schools enforce that children should start cursive. It is very hard. The formation of print is not yet in their brain. You are trying to confuse the brain, and the children who are vulnerable to learning problems are easily affected when you bring in cursive before the print formation is fully formed. Usually, fourth grade is when you should start cursive writing. Um, Dysgraphia interferes with lot of communication, specifically when you ask them only to write. Most of our system, we do not allow oral examinations. We do not, um, what we say, encourage oral expression. We all express everything in writing. They all come back with incomplete classwork, incomplete homework, incomplete or blank exam pages. The next component is dyscalculia. So when I'm looking, I'm sorry, these are the two things, as I said, developmental coordination and disorder of written expression. When I'm looking at coordination, it is about the mechanics of writing. Poor writing skills, awkward pencil grip or wrist position, how they are positioning themselves in a table. How much is the space that you provide? You put four children in a bench. They don't even have space to write. How do you do? They would have poorly spaced letters and words. The speed and increased effort is there, and it causes hand fatigue. Then disorder of written expression. Um, this is some example of dysgraphia. The top portion is somewhere when a child is given adequate time and puts a lot of effort. It's the same person who's asked to write very fast, the writing changes. Okay, so when I'm looking at dyscalculia, this is primarily a relate problem with math. Their reading and writing generally will never be affected, and it should not be confused with children who do not have much of interest in math. There is a difference between having interest and having dyscalculia. Children with dyscalculia have difficulties starting with basic numbers and shapes, recalling math facts, writing numbers legibly in small spaces. Remember these small square notebooks that you give them? They would have difficulty. They would have difficulty relating math terms to meaning. Simple, altogether, what does it mean? Difference, what that it mean? What is different, how many times, what is one times, multiple times. They, as they go, some of the children are able to manage up to fourth or fifth grade. Some of them who have abstract reasoning problems, even cognitively, as you go into sixth standard, where they have to start algebra and higher level abstract reasoning skills, they have difficulty there. They have difficulty identifying using monitoring of algorithms to solve problems. So if you have any of these, it is dyscalculia. Please do not confuse it with children who have math problems related to dyslexia or dysgraphia. Children with dyscalculia also have difficulty in memorizing basic math facts, retrieval of facts, remembering sequences, before, after, upper, higher, lower, remembering your values, place values, and all that. They have difficulties in understanding symbols of plus, minus, multiplication, and division, equal to, and when you have to do calculations with multiple operations. They have difficulty understanding patterns and relationships between patterns. They have difficulty with concepts of counting, place value. Okay, so time and money, everything will be affected. With regards to organization, they have difficulty remaining within the lines. So when you do two-step division, two-digit or three-digit division or multiplication, their lines will not be aligned. When the lines are not aligned, automatically it causes errors in calculation. So they have difficulty writing numbers in appropriate places. So these are also difficulties seen in dyscalculia with regards to written and memory components. They are generally very impulsive in responding, and they have a preference for mental calculation rather than having to write them down. So sometimes while they are doing mental calculations, they may go wrong because they may miss a step. Their speed in retrieving is slow, and hence it contributes to slower speed in math classes. Um, Time-based task obviously will be difficult for them. Anxiety is a component that comes in. These are children, as soon as the math exam comes, they feel as if the whole world is going to drop. These difficulties actually lead to school dropouts and other complications. It may even lead to not liking the math teacher or not liking the subject, not wanting to go to school, all that. The other next type of learning problem is dyspraxia, which I said is more related to coordination. So they have difficulties in gross motor, clumsy, buttoning up and down, buttoning, unbuttoning not clearly. They have physical issues and balance issues. These are children who may be adequately good in reading and writing, but would not want to go to sports. Most children who may give excuses, dyslexia, they will give excuse in learning tasks and may choose sports tasks. We also see a set of children who don't want to go onto the ground, who would say, I have a headache, I have a stomach ache, I have a leg ache when you ask them to go to sports. So there is a possibility they have difficulties with regards to coordination issues. We talked about metacognition, remember? So, what is metacognition? If you have to understand this very well, if you have to understand difficulties in children's learning problems, and when you have to term them as behavioral difficulties. Metacognition is nothing but cognition about cognition, or knowing about knowing. It's very simple. I'm talking to you now. While I'm talking, I'm always thinking, did I speak it right? Did I convey what I needed to convey? Or when I conveyed, did I convey it the right thing? And if I conveyed it wrong, am I able to change it? Okay, so it is an awareness of how I think and monitor my own thinking while I'm doing the work. So it's a little complex, right? So children who have learning problems in general and even behavioral problems have a significant deficit in this metacognition. And hence, they do not wait, they just blurt out. And when you ask them, what did you blurt out? What did you say? Repeat it. They cannot because they are not aware of what even they said. And if you ask them, are you sure you said the right thing? No, they don't have a cue about it at all. They do not have the facility to go back to see what they even said or to check if what they said was right or wrong. This could cause a significant difficulty in classes. Apart from these, remember, they also have sensory motor difficulties. Oral motor, you see them very clumsy while they are eating. An 8-year-old, 9-year-old child not able to eat without spilling or making your dining table messy. Okay, they have difficulty with related to finger related, like knots, putting knots on their shoes, pajamas, buttoning, zipping up, all that. With regards to eyes, as I said, the words look like swimming. They get tired easily looking at the book, so they avoid even taking the book and they prefer you to read it to them. They would say, why don't you tell me and I will listen? They tend to lose place, so it would like they start with the first word on the first line, suddenly jump on to the second, then go back to the first or to the third. They have difficulty with spatial awareness, left and right, up and down. So it affects learning or following instructions and writing too. Look at this. Try to look at this for 2 to 3 seconds. It's so hard, right? So this is what happens to children. They do pass their visual examination clearly, but if this is what a book looks to you, would you want to touch that book again? So please understand that these could be certain difficulties that they are facing before terming them lazy, stupid, idiot, and all these terms. Apart from the learning and other memory cognition problems, they also have behavioral challenges. They are not necessarily primarily children with behavioral problems, but their learning problems could cause behavioral issues. Attention and executive functioning, like decision making, planning, judgment, organization, they could be taken for a toss. They could have anxiety. They could be oppositional over time. Imagine this child is being compared at home constantly, compared in school constantly. Eventually, there are two different reactions these children take. They either go into a shell and become depressed or become rebellious. Anyway, you're going to scold me. What's the point? I will, instead of not doing and getting the scolding, I will just get the scolding anyway. So that's the attitude they take in. They may have obsessive compulsive, they may develop obsessive compulsive disorder eventually. We also see, as I said, hereditarily, if you see, parents would have similar challenges. Sometimes they may deny, sometimes parents will say, yeah, I also had some difficulty, but they may never be aware of it. As I said, it was nothing big in their generation, but current generation, it's a big thing. So that is the difference between normality and abnormality. That brings us to the end of a learning problems, primary learning problems. Okay, so this is another set of children. Now we are getting on into behavioral problems. uh, Now see these pictures, a lot of children might come to your mind when you see these pictures itself. We are so easy to label them ADHD. Okay, so what is this ADHD? It is coming up a lot. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry now says this. Oh, ADHD, ADHD. This child has ADHD. Without even understanding this concept, we are so easy to term any child ADHD today. So, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is ADHD. They are basically two types, primarily inattentive type, or it could be a primarily hyperactive type, or a child can have both inattention and hyperactivity. So when I talk about inattention, what are the characteristics that I'm looking for is they are easily distractible. They cannot hold attention. You are teaching, and a mild noise from another class with other children are barely able to listen. This child will be easily distractible. A small pencil sharpener, a small eraser falling down, a bird chirping out, a bell ringing far away. All these could be easily distractible to the child. They have difficulty following directions, very poor organization. They tend to lose things. Parents would say, every day I have to get a new pencil. They would say, somebody took it, I lost, they don't know. Forgetfulness in every daily activities. That means this is a child, you from the morning you'd say, please go brush your teeth. Did you flush the toilet? Did you put on your shirts? Did you take everything? Did you eat? Everything from morning to night, you have to instruct them. They have a tendency to daydream. They avoid activities that require sustained attention. It's very simple. They will just avoid. They will just avoid activities that require sustained attention. They don't pay close attention to detail and make careless mistakes. They won't know. So that means, you know what? Many a times, these are children who would answer papers, you will see. The challenging answers are right, but the most simple answer would be wrong. It's only because they took it so casually, they are overconfident that they've made careless errors. But a challenging task is more requires a lot more more of attention or inquisitiveness that they are able to do it. The second component, which second subtype, which is hyperactivity, is where children have difficulty remaining in seat when expected. So you expect them to be remaining in your seat for 40 minutes? No. After 10 minutes, they need to get out. They will get up. They will fidget. They will squirm. You would see a lot of this even in your home. A lot of us do that. They are always moving, running, climbing on things as if on a battery. Okay, they are constantly on the go, we call them. They have difficulty playing quietly. They make a lot of noise when playing, or some of them have excessive talking. Please remember, these are characteristics, and every child need not demonstrate each of these skills. Some of them may be classic textbook, some of them would have only a few of them, but an expert would be able to identify based on a lot of other domain or evaluations. Added to this, they can have impulsivity. That means they have difficulty waiting for their turn. You ask them to stand in line, they cannot. You ask them to answer before your question is completed, they would blurt out answers. They would interrupt you often when you are talking. They would act without giving thought about consequences. You would have told them n number of times, do not do this, do not do this. It would as if it has all gone on deaf ears. Okay, so these are the basic characteristics of inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. So what are the causes for ADHD? They could be either physiological, that means dietary, it could be allergies, and it could be toxins. Remember, our lifestyle changes. Why do we have more children with ADHD today? I would definitely say it can also be counted as one of the lifestyle diseases, as similar to diabetes and hypertension. They have a lot of sugar, food with preservatives, a lot of gluten related, all of these things are coming in, and hence that could be causing the difficulty. It could be also due to behavioral, that means any lack in parental boundaries could lead to attention issues. Emotional trauma can be primary or secondary, that could cause the ADHD, or it could be a result of ADHD. It could be a basic temperament, that means that's what they are wired and they come wired into our lives. Hunter versus farmer, that's that personality. It could be either inattentive, hyperactive, or combined. Also, the latest factor is a lot based on our social media, the culture, the school, the excessive electronic usage. Even though science is still, we are still debating, children do debate, we do see that there's a lot of this technological development we see has an effect on ADHD. There is another variant of behavioral.
Lalita ma'am, Priyanka here.
Yeah,
Just wanted to check how many slides would per se be remaining because we were looking for a session till 6 o'clock. So I just wanted to give an update to
yeah,
the.
another few slides only.
Sure,
We
ma'am.
are
I
almost
hope
towards the
everyone would
end.
be okay with that. And ma'am, there are few questions in the chat which
We will
many
take
of
care of it. Yeah, because there were a lot of interruptions in between. The slides went, thus they would
no
go a little
problem.
more time.
No
Yeah.
problem, ma'am. I just wanted to
Uh,
update everyone that it'll take ma'am a couple of more
yeah, sure.
minutes with
No
the
problem.
slides and then she'll answer all your questions.
So we are looking at another behavioral component, which is positional defiant disorder. A lot of your adolescents at home would also be doing it, but not everybody is defiant. A lot of children with ADHD also will be oppositional, but that doesn't mean they are oppositional defiant. A lot of times when we see the antisocial elements, they do have oppositional or conduct disorders. They are easily angered, annoyed, or irritated, frequent temper tantrums, they are argumentative, they refuse to obey rules. Do not term every adolescent as oppositional defiant. So there are certain clinical characteristics that we require apart from all these only things. They always continue to blame others, they question rules, they're very harsh and rude. The next behavioral component is conduct disorder. So there is a frequent refusal to obey. These are children who get into a lot of juvenile or criminal activities because they do have keenness. They start fight. They are being aggressive. They lack empathy. The key component is they lack empathy. Differentiation of conduct and oppositional from a child with ADHD is a child with ADHD will do these behaviors and then feel sorry for it. They do it because they are impulsive. They are not able to understand, or they cannot stop before they start. But children who have a conduct or an oppositional will never show the remorse. So the key component to differentiate a child with ADHD versus the other two types is the remorse or the empathy component. There's chronic lying and easy frustratedness. Remember, behavioral and learning problems cause secondary social emotional disorders. They cause anxiety, they cause phobias, they cause depression, they may cause obsessive compulsive disorder, they may even lead to psychotic disorders. That means there is a lot of secondary problems with children with learning and behavioral disorders. So, what could we in our classroom see? When you're seeing academic skills, you're seeing both children with learning or behavioral problems will show difficulty with reading, writing, or math. Remember, behavioral problems can also cause learning problems. Learning problems can also cause behavioral. So it may not be easy for you to determine both, but if you have any deficits, if you have difficulties, document which becomes the primary problem, and that gives you help in intervention. So with reading, we are looking at letter word recognition and reading comprehension skills. With writing, we see a spelling and written expression, which includes grammar, punctuation, and everything. With math, we are looking at math concepts and applications and math computation skills. So when you're looking at reading, phonological sound symbol association is lost. They have difficulty in decoding. That means BAT, bat. They have difficulty in reading frequently used words as a, and, the, if, so, to. Okay, they have difficulty not in reading, but it may be in understanding what they are reading, which is the comprehension component. Obviously, lack of vocabulary also undermines. Fluency gets affected. That means how fast they read also gets affected. Uh, Oral language also gets affected. Writing components, basic, their handwriting, as I said, you would see spelling errors, you would see children who are having difficulty with capitalization, punctuation, sentence structure formation. I am instead of who am I am who. Okay, prince I am. I am a prince. No, it's not I am a prince, it's prince I am. Okay, so content aspects of writing, poor vocabulary, as I said, difficulty, challenge, they'd come down to the easiest word that is possible. They have difficulty elaborating in detail. That means their essays will be just four sentences. They may have the points, but they not be able to elaborate on the points. They may have ideas, but the quality, clarity, and organization is poor. In higher classes, when we are looking at high school children, we see them having difficulty in planning and revising their writing documents. In math, basic number concepts, operations, you might see difficulty in children learning plus, minus, multiplication, division. Geometric concepts, two-dimensional shapes, three-dimensional shapes. We are looking at fractions, decimals. Uh, we are looking at learning times table. We are looking at learning formulas and higher level operations. Remember, whole class is a garden. As I said, every child is different. But if you don't have this mix of children, you're having a difficulty. So it is necessary. Why is this webinar important? Is you have to know these problems in order to identify them. Now, why should I identify them is a thing. If you do identify, you can either prevent a disorder from happening or reduce the severity. As parents and teachers, it allows you to have a realistic expectation of this child. And having a realistic expectation allows you to make modifications and helps you apply appropriate treating strategies. When you have realistic expectations of this child, you reduce the pressure of this child. So that means this is a balloon which is just a small size. This is a bigger balloon. So you will blow only that much air. What happens if you blow additional air? The balloon bursts. As simple as that. If you reduce the pressure on a student, success rate of this child increases. When there is a success rate, it increases self-esteem and confidence, and knowing the realistic limitations and strengths allow you to plan long term for a child. You know, okay, this child is a slow learner. Why would I go on to have a idea of engineering or medicine and put this child through n number of courses? No, let me take an easier thing, make sure the child is happy and learns enough to get a vocation. And when should I do this identification? Earlier, the better. Even though you can identify at every stage up to high school, it is better that you identify child from preschool to kindergarten because it's easier for remediation. So here we come to the component of assessment. So why should an assessment be made? An identification requires assessment. So why is that? It helps me understand where my child is. It helps me understand the current level of performance on different domains. Again, it is not just academics only, as I said. A lot of multiple areas come into play when it comes to learning, which as teachers, we are only concerned about is this if I'm a math teacher, I'm only about math grades. If I'm a science teacher, I'm only bothered about science. I'm not bothered about English. I'm not, if it's a language teacher, I'm not bothered about science and math. All I want to do is language. So I need to obtain current levels of functioning across all developmental, cognitive, behavioral domains. And how can this assessment be done? It can be done both formally and informally by teachers as well as experts by using simple checklist observation and through standardized tools. So there are multiple simple questionnaires to standardized assessments available. Eventually, you would we require every child to go through a screening. If a child is screened negative, then you monitor for other positives. If a child is screened positive at a school level, always refer for detailed evaluation to an expert, and they will do a detailed intelligence, academic, behavioral, social, emotional. I will always do the visual, speech, hearing, because we have to rule out other possibilities before we term this child as learning problems or psychological. So now who does the screening? As teachers, you can do screening and professionals can do screening. You can do the screening at a school setting or a hospital or a clinic setting. You can use simple checklist and rating scales to do the screening or use standardized measures for using the doing. As a detailed assessment, it is always done only by clinical psychologists, school psychologists, speech language therapist, audiologist, occupational therapist. An academic evaluation is done by a special educator. It is usually done in a very quiet location, but it requires multiple batteries or multiple tools. So usually a lot of standardized methods are taken in, but at the same time, we require teachers to send in their observations, their notes. Why do I feel is like it's important to make a diagnosis in order to give the child an appropriate educational planning? It helps the school and the parents know what we need to expect and what we need to intervene. Review should be done every year, and an assessment is done every 3 years in order to monitor the progress of the child. So simple tools that we will be using, the IQ tools generally will be used by the experts, but as teachers, you can use simple cognitive screening tools that are available with PSL. So teachers can do basic progressive matrices that we call, gives us an idea, which will also be helpful in screening. In academics, you have dyslexia screening tools from preschool level, school age, even through adolescence. You have simple, your own classroom assessments of reading, writing, and math would be good enough for us. As you said, please look at the academic domains that I had mentioned in reading, writing, and math. So look at each subdomain and try to assess it at each level. Is the child understanding, identifying letters, identifying words, naming letters, naming words? So each of your assessment in each domain, what you do on a classroom teaching basis, is helpful as an assessment by itself. With regards to behavioral tool, there are some easily available. It's a Vanderbilt tool that is called, it's online available, and that can be used for documentation to explain to parents, see, this is what we are noting in school. Do you also note? There is a parent rated version and a teacher rated version. So you can have a parent do it, and it's online freely available. It's the Vanderbilt tool. but there are other tools that generally are used by experts who in turn work with teachers to get their information. So we come to the end of the presentation. Um, I always conclude saying parents and teachers are two most important people in every child's life. You see them more than anybody else, and hence you are the ones who can catch them before they fall. And what you do actually makes or breaks a child's life. Thank you. Um, so I so okay. So is there other questions? I don't. Let me see if there are any questions.
A few questions were on when do this kind of issues start, or by when can teachers start identifying these issues
Okay.
as early, like what kind of age group?
See,
That was one of
if
the questions.
if you are in daycare, if you are in preschool, as I said, there are developmental domains. A child who's delayed in walking and speaking, that means it's an indicator that there could be learning problems. But as teachers, you can start observing a child from preschool age. That's why I said keep into the entire background of this child. Is this child a first generation learner? Then most of the time what we expect as teachers is at school I teach, the parent has to take care of the rest. So now if this is a first generation learner or a migrant, okay, who comes from a completely different place with lower education or lower thing, what sort of a academic support is this child going to get at home? So this child who comes without homework, instead of asking ask the parent why the child doesn't do homework, and instead of punishing the child, help the child to do all the learning in school. So you can look at it from preschool level, where they have difficulty learning rhymes, difficulty learning simple words, simple letters. At the end of kindergarten, pre UKG, if a child has not yet learned the alphabets, identifying or naming or writing alphabets, that is your earliest indicator. But the average age of identifying learning problems is around 10 to 11 years. That means third to fourth standard. Why so? Because till first and second standard, most of the schools and the learning is only one word, two word, and a lot of oral is allowed. Even during examinations, teachers would be reading out the question paper, and hence you may not find these children who are actually having the problem. Third standard onwards, they are supposed to read their own question paper and write. That makes the difficulty. Okay, so that would also be a problem. So you can identify it as early as preschool, even earlier, but if it's with regards to preschool. Yeah. So I have some question. Himanshu ma'am, do children with ADHD tend to procrastinate? Yes, they do. Not everything. Children, parents do ask, you tell that my child is ADHD, but he can watch a 3 hour movie or play on a game forever. Yes, they can do things that are of interest to them for hours together. But what they feel as it takes a lot of effort, those are tasks that they avoid. So they do tend to procrastinate, yes. Children who have low attention span when it comes to reading but can passionately write. So possibly this is a child you should evaluate for dyslexia. That means there is a problem with reading, but the writing is not being affected. Um, any other question? Priya, how do we convince parents if the child has learning disability? Please document from the time the child is in your class, like the beginning of the year, through every point, try to convince parents that there is a deficit. Do not always bring out the negative. Bring out the positive first, and then tell them that there are deficits in this, while other children are able to learn the same concept in 2 times or 3 times. Your child has difficulty. And always you should be able to tell them what intervention you have attempted before just telling he has a problem. So you should have tried intervention before you go to them. You should have tried saying, we have attempted A, B, C, and document everything. Despite all of this, the child is still not learning or still has difficulty in learning these concepts. So this is why we tell, if you can please go take a help of an expert who can evaluate and let us know what it is so we can help the child better. It is always about how you communicate to the parents, is about convincing them. It is all with the way a teacher communicates. uh, any other questions, ma'am? Hello?
And there are few questions related to, can a kid have multiple learning disabilities?
No, generally, no. It is not the right way, but many people do that. It's a wrong way of doing it. If you have multiple, then possibly it comes under one, which they have not realized and put out. They do not know how to put together. Children can have learning disability with attention problem. Children can have intellectual disability with attention deficits. But children cannot have slow learner and an ID, I mean intellectual disability. Okay. And children cannot have dyslexia and dysgraphia, which is wrong. Children who have difficult, you have to determine which is the predominant part. As I said, children with dyslexia also have writing problems. That is where it's needed. Many people do not know how to clearly differentiate, and that is why you need to go to the right expert who knows neuropsychological assessments to be able to put the evaluations together. How authentic or online IQ test? Not authentic. I wouldn't say you should rely on that. It is fun to take. You can take it for fun. You can take, but do not make any decisions based on that.
Good evening, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, before beginning the class, may we give any exercise for the hyperactive children?
It would be nice if you can just do a warm up. But remember, if you have children who are hyperactive, always place them nearer to you. And you know that is my attention span. So if they need a movement break, just ask them to go around or do some activity outside and then return back.
Ma'am, there have been few queries on if a child learns to speak a bit later than usual. Is
Mhm.
that, can that be associated with learning disability?
We always keep them at risk for learning disability. Not necessarily, but we always consider at a risk and they should be monitored. When the child comes to us with learning with lack of or delayed speech, we continue them up to 6 years of age. We monitor them up to 6 years of age to make sure that learning problems are not there. Is there any other question?
I think you have covered most of the queries which the attendees had. And
Okay.
I would really like to thank you for a very, very informative session. I really believe that attendees really enjoyed the session and learned quite a lot, as is quite apparent from the comments which we see in the chat box. So thanks a lot again for your time.
I think we are
And
all
thank you
learning with
everyone
regards
for
to.
attending this session, and hopefully it will be a good learning experience for you, which you would be able to implement in your class and benefit from it, and hopefully even the children would be able to benefit from this session eventually, which is what the purpose of everything which we do as teachers is. So thanks a lot for attending the session, and thanks a lot for conducting the session, ma'am. And we
Thank you.
would also like to thank Pearson for helping us arrange this session.
Thank
So
you.
have a good day. Bye bye, everyone.